Hey guys, it was good Triple J boxing. So I'm gonna make my prediction for Terence Bud Crawford versus Israel the Dream, the real Dream, Madrimov, not Devin Haney. Uh, yeah, so I'm gonna give my prediction, guys. Uh, Now I went back and I watched tape on Madrimov because I know a lot of you, even hardcores out there, a lot of you didn't know Madrimov that well, and I was one of them. So I went back and I watched his fights, the more prominent fights, and I went back and I watched some Terence Crawford, but I pretty much seen pretty much all of Terence Crawford's fights since I don't know, I can't even remember. I've been watching Terence Crawford for a long time now. Um, the first Terence Crawford fight I maybe seen was I don't even know. Probably back in 2012, 2012 maybe 2011. I don't know, a long time. But yeah, Madrimov, he's more new to the professional game. Only 10 fights in. Debuted in 2018, whereas Terence Bud Crawford debuted in 2008. Now that's crazy. That's crazy. But don't let that fool you because even though Terence Bud Crawford does have way more professional experience, um, uh, Israel has more amateur background experience than Crawford does. So you have that. But obviously, this is the professional game. But anyway, guys, so I went back and I watched more tape because I'm hearing a lot of conflicting um, opinions, which you always do. People are going to go for the guy they like or whatever. But I look at the eye test, what I think when I watch them, and I'm going to give my opinion on it. So, Madrimov, essentially, like at the beginning, everyone thinks Crawford's just going to walk through him because we don't really know much about Madrimov. I assume that's the way the casual will look into this. And you can't always go by that, guys. If you do your research, for those people who actually like watch a lot of boxing and the hardcores, you'll know that Madrimov is no joke, and that this could be a very tough fight for Crawford, and this is a respectable. Like Crawford didn't have to go this route because this is a very tough fight, and the casual's not going to give him any credit for this fight either because the casual doesn't really know Madrimov at all. So you gotta give Crawford credit for taking this route because he could have went the Sebastian Fundora route. He could have there's Jermel Charlo. I know Tim Tszyu doesn't got the belt anymore, but all those guys are more well known, and he could have went that route. Instead, he's choosing a guy no one really knows. So you have to respect that. Um, Obviously, you have Virgil Ortiz there as well. But yeah, so back to Madrimov. I watched tape on him, and I gotta say, I was actually impressed. So I went back and the fights I watched were the Karbunov fight. So that was his last fight that he got a knockout victory. He looked very impressive in that fight against a solid opponent. And I also watched the Ibagwe a fight. Um, I was impressed with his performance there as well. And that guy was eating shots. Like, I gotta say, that guy can take a shot because, like, Israel was landing bombs on that guy, like triple G type shots on that guy, and that guy was not going down. Now, at the end of the fight, he almost did go down. He was getting shook up, but that guy can take a punch. And what I realized, and that's what I was going to get to this, guys. What I realized about Israil Madrimov is he reminds me of Triple G, the way he throws his shots, his overhand right, his hooks, and the just the thudding power of his shots reminds me of Triple G. I'm not going to say he's fully Triple G power, but I mean he's 10 and 0, 7 KOs, so a little more fights in, you never know. But I mean, the thudding sound of his shots and the way he throws them reminds me of Triple G. And then I notice when he does use his footwork and he starts moving around, he does have that Bivol footwork, that in and out. So he has very good strong legs. So he reminds me of Triple G and Bivol combined into a package here. But yeah, guys. And then I watched the Mitchell Soro fights. Both of those fights, which one of them was pretty much, it ended in a, the fight got stopped, so it ended in a draw. But I mean, that was the second fight. The first fight, he got a knockout win in the 9th round, which it was a little suspect, the refereeing job and the way the fight got stopped. If you go and watch that fight, guys. So Israil Madrimov really did hurt Soro at the end of round 9, but the bell rang and he kept on landing like heavy shots. And for some reason, the ref got caught up in the action. He didn't hear the bell ringing. And I could have swore Madrimov landed like 5 or 6 more shots on Soro. And then he waved it off. But the round was over and he waved it off. So it made no sense. But I'll give credit to Madrimov. Soro was pretty hurt, but it shouldn't have been stopped. But then he came back in the rematch and it ended in a cut, head clash, unintentional head clash in round 3. But it looked like Madrimov got even better in the rematch because it looked like he was pouring it on even earlier. Like he was hurting Soro way earlier in the fight, and it looked like he was on his way to getting an even earlier stoppage. So I'm not going to fully write off that fight because it looked like he improved and he was doing even better. So what I learned from those fights is Madrimov's the real deal. And his amateur experience shows up, and in these fights, he's got a very good jab. Like I said, he reminds me of Triple G with his combinations and his jab and his power shots, and his footwork reminds me of Bivol. They're all that Eastern European style. And I gotta say, another thing that impressed me about Madrimov is he has a good sense of distance. And what really stood out was his right hand is very good. His overhand right, his straight right. Both of those shots are very good. And he has a very good stab jab to the body. And he's a very good body puncher. And he mixes it up well to the head and body. So he'll throw a combination and it'll go head, body very well. So that's probably what I took away from those fights is reminds me of a Triple G Bivol hybrid. I would say more like Triple G, but his body attack was very good. His combinations. So, in his right hand. But let me know what you guys think about Madrimov in the comments. Do you agree with me on that? Let me know. And then we'll get to Terence Crawford. So Terence Crawford, I initially picked him to win, obviously, even when the fight was announced. But I gotta say, I didn't know enough about Madrimov, so I didn't fully trust my prediction by just, like, that was just my initial prediction. I think, Terence Crawford, right? I don't really know much about this guy. But now that I've done more research, it's starting to change a little bit. But I'll get to Terence Crawford, so I went back and I watched some tape. Like I said, I think I only went back and I watched one fight because I forgot if I even watched the fight in full. So the fight that Terence Crawford had with David Avanesian, I might have skipped that fight or I just watched the highlights. I forget, but I went back to it because I just wasn't interested in that fight. I thought it was more like a tune-up. But yeah, I went back and watched that fight. And David Avanesian was landing pretty heavy shots on Crawford early in that fight, which I thought was interesting. Obviously, Crawford ate them. But I'm saying there's definitely going to be openings for Madrimov. But eventually, like I said, everyone succumbs to the Crawford power and gets knocked out. And then we've seen what Crawford did to Errol Spence. Now, I thought Errol Spence was damaged goods going into the fight. I said that. I thought the way Errol Spence looked in ever since the car crash, he's never been fully the same. And I think he fought Danny Garcia after the car crash. He looked good, but was he really that? I don't know. What I really didn't like about Errol Spence was that fight against Ugas. He really looked like he slipped in that fight. Ugas hurt him badly in one of the rounds, and I know he ended up getting the stoppage because he's just Errol Spence got that workhorse mentality in there. He's just kept on pouring it on, and eventually he broke down Ugas. But I mean, like, earlier in the fight, and there was a point in the fight where Ugas really hurt him badly, and that never would have happened. I feel like pre-car crash, that wouldn't have happened. So I was questioning him because of that going into the Terence Crawford fight, and I was right. He didn't look the same anymore. He was diminished. And I think that's why Crawford, and I'm not taking away anything from Crawford, I give more credit to Crawford for looking good than for taking away credit for Errol Spence looking bad, because even though I didn't think Errol Spence has ever been the same after the car crash, physically, mentally I still think he was strong, but physically I think he's just not the same. It's just when you're in that kind of car crash, guys, if you looked at the footage of that, like, it was like he could have been dead. And the way the body gets thrown out of a car like that, and the trauma that your body absorbs from the impact, I don't know if you can ever fully be the same physically. But anyway, other than that, guys, what do you call it? Yeah, like, I gave more credit to Terence Crawford for the win than taking away credit, just because even though Errol wasn't the same, in my opinion, no one else could beat him still. Like, Ugas still got stopped. Even though he had success, he still got stopped. Danny Garcia still couldn't beat him, right? So you got to give credit still to Terence for getting it done. And obviously you got to look at Errol Spence's troublemaking weight, blowing up to staggering weights after the fights on the offseason. I heard he was, like, blowing up to, like, really high weights, and he's fighting at 147. So he was known to not really stay in shape in between fights, so that can come to get you eventually, right? Over time, as you get older, it's going to affect you more. So that could have affected him too. But so Terence Crawford, the way he breaks you down, and when he hurts you, he gets you out of there. And obviously, his IQ, his skill level, his what do you call it? His ability to know when to be in the right place at the right time, his range, his distance, he's mastered all that. He's pretty much a complete fighter, and he's on a knockout streak. I don't even know how many fights now. Like, I'll have to count because it's been so many, I forget. I actually had to go back to on BoxRec to find out when the last decision was, and it was Victor Postol. That was a long time ago, guys. That was like back in the HBO days, almost 10 years ago now. That was his last decision he had. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 straight knockout wins. That's like Triple G knockout streak right there, guys. So who do I have winning the fight, guys? I still got Terence Crawford winning. After all, I said all that. Terence Crawford, 40-0, 31 KOs, 78% knockout percentage, 5'8", 74-inch reach. Israil Madrimov, he's 10-0, 7 KOs, 70% KO percentage. He's 5'8.5", but his reach is only 68.5, which isn't bad. But Terence Crawford's 74-inch reach, that's pretty crazy. But the one thing I'll put against Crawford here, guys, is the age. Bud is 36, Madrimov is 29. And like I said, Madrimov is in his prime. Sure, he only has 10 fights, but he has a lot of amateur background experience. He's won like he's won tournaments in the Asian Games, like 2 gold medals and a silver medal, and so the guy is not he's not inexperienced. But if you're going to put a disadvantage to him, you would say professional experience. He's at a disadvantage, but everything else, youth wise, age well, not everything else. I mean, reach wise, he's at a disadvantage too. So if you take out the reach and professional experience, you got to give that to Crawford. But I mean, like, age that could come into the factor here, guys. So this is the way I think the fight's gonna go, guys. I think it's gonna be a tough fight for Terence Crawford, but I have Crawford edging it out. I have him winning more rounds and winning a decision against Madrimov. I can't picture either of these guys getting knocked out. Madrimov's just too skilled as well, and he's too strong to get stopped, I feel like. And Crawford is too slick, I feel like, and strong to get stopped as well. So I have this fight going to decision, guys, but I don't see it being a wash. I see it being a competitive fight and possibly worthy of a rematch. But I'm going to go ahead and say Crawford by decision. He's just he's gonna win enough rounds to get, I don't know, I'm gonna say like 7-5 clearly, or 8-4 or something like that. But I feel like it's gonna be rounds where Madrimov lands some pretty big shots on Crawford and sways some of the fans to believe that it was a close fight and maybe even pulling it off. But I'm gonna say Crawford's gonna do enough to eke out the decision. That's my prediction, guys. I just feel like Crawford's he's an all-round fighter. He can do it all. My only concern with Crawford is the age and how he takes the shots of a strong guy like Madrimov, because Madrimov has pretty good power, and those overhand right hands, and the way he goes to the body and the head combinations, if he can clip Crawford with that right hand to the head, if Crawford can't take that, like at his age, we don't know. So that's my only concern there. But if he can take the shot of Madrimov when he does get hit, and age isn't a factor, I got Crawford winning. But it's a very good fight, guys. This is Triple J Boxing. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.